Tortured Poets era has to be talked about, because as successful as it has been an era that once again shifted the perception of Taylor Swift. She is an unprecedented commercial force in the industry, and an icon. The Tortured Poets department debuted once again with record-breaking sales, but this time around with lukewarm reviews from fans and critics alike. The album seemed to aid in totality to the Swift universe, being an album almost completely immersed in her own lore. Outside of its commercial performance, The Tortured Poets has left virtually no impact on pop culture, which begs the question, how is it possible that the world's biggest star feels like she's struggling to be a part of the zeitgeist, while so desperately wanting not only to be a part of it, but define it? How is it possible that an album so commercially massive feels so culturally passable? In a year where we had Drake vs. Kendrick, Sabrina Carpenter having us drink her espresso, Billie Eilish embracing her queerness and releasing arguably the greatest album of her career, Beyoncé inciting global conversations about race and genre, and bulldozing a path for not only herself, but other young black artists to gain visibility in country music in real time, Chaperone making an unapologetic queer rise, and last but not least, the world at large having a brat summer, including one of the presidential candidates for the US. Despite the Tortured Poets department being more commercially successful than all of these releases, it has been notably absent from a lot of these cultural shifting moments. If anything, it has become a bit of a mockery. For the first time in her career, Taylor's large amounts of re-releases and special editions, in order to stay at #1 on the charts, reached past smaller internet music circles and caught the attention of mainstream media, with many accusing her of intentionally blocking other young women from the top spot on the charts. Notably releasing a UK-specific version of the Tortured Poets once Charli XCX was challenging for a #1 debut, as well as releasing editions once Billie Eilish was set to take the #1 spot. Both were ultimately blocked by Swift. These consistent releases have attracted memes, mockery, and people being genuinely curious on Swift's thought process on these releases, and if they entail a more nefarious motive. With every new version, it seemed that the Tortured Poets album and era became increasingly limp. Already one of Taylor's more divisive records, the promotion was smothering and the music lacking, completely centered in her personal relationships, allegedly about Joe Alwyn and Matty Healy, as well as alleged petty and tired attacks on Kim Kardashian, because apparently in the Swift world that's still the biggest deal in the world despite the mountain she's climbed. I also think it's not an album that necessarily allows for much open interpretation, which made an album like Folklore so resonant, and showed a new artistic side of Taylor. The Tortured Poet showed a slightly different side of Taylor as well, but one that is much more sonically stagnant and self-referential. But lore has been such an integral part of her branding that that aspect of the record is enough to satisfy a good majority of the Swift-verse, even if it happens to be some of Swift's worst production, melodic and lyrical inconsistent work in a while. I think the Tortured Poets record is a perfect showing of sales not defining cultural presence, conversations, or influence. Sometimes a record or even artist can just be that, commercially successful. It's also worth noting that figures like Lana Del Rey have been a major point of reference for Taylor Swift's recent work. Echoes of Lord's sparse minimalist pop circa Pure Heroine, as well as the dizzying electro-pop of Melodrama, can also be found in Taylor's recent work. These are examples of figures who aren't commercial titans, yet completely reshaped pop within the last decade. And Taylor's knack certainly lies more within being able to shape stories out of her own experiences, not being a musical provocateur or forward thinker, and that's okay. We need all colors of the rainbow in the music industry. Taylor is so powerful that she actually doesn't need pop culture. She is her own entity, her own culture. The Tortured Poets department will not be an album that defines the zeitgeist of the 2020s. It's not even an album that defined 2024, despite being the biggest of them all. But in the Swift universe, it reigns supreme, and is in addition to the almighty Eras Tour. It's an album that mythologizes herself in real time, and continues to reinforce her powerful relationship with her fanbase. And I think that will always be the force driving Miss Swift. If pop culture turns her down, her fanbase will surely turn her even louder.